I, 39 meters, just caught my wife, 38F, of 14 years, together 17 years, cheating on me with her district manager of Aramark Refreshments for about 2 years now. Before I get into details, there's a backstory to all of this. Want you all to get a full picture and decide if she was entitled to cheat or did I just pay off a debt I owed? In 2012, I took my wife to get her tonsils removed at the hospital. They gave me her belongings as she couldn't take them inside surgery room. Her phone kept buzzing. I took it upon myself to see who was blowing her up, and I read tons of inappropriate emails with another man at work. She was reading a 50 Shades of Grey at the time and was referring to the man as her Christian Grey, something she would call me. I was pissed and wanted answers, but, unfortunately, she couldn't talk after surgery, so on the drive home, I handed her a piece of paper with a pen to answer all the questions I had. And she wrote, it was nothing but flirting. I grabbed my 2-year-old and briefcase of clothes, and went from Seattle's on a mini weekend getaway with my support team, my best friend and his wife, to stay away from her for a while. Once back, she informed me that she deleted her email and it won't happen again. Fast forward a few years, and I just could never get over the fact that she would betray me the way she did. I wanted to get even and felt that it was the only way to move forward from it. I met a client who showed me some attention. We started texting, and while my wife would go out with her friends and party, I would secretly leave my son with my mum and go see this woman. We had an affair and eventually fell in love with this other woman. After about 9 months, my affair partner tells me she's pregnant. First thing that came to my head was playing Usher's confession song and actually confessing to my wife, which I did. She took it pretty well as she told me she had an idea and that God was preparing her for that moment. I told her that I wanted a divorce and would like to start a new life with this other woman. She told me that we can work things out, to go to church more and get therapy from the pastor, and all should be great. How could I say no to that? I had to break the news to the pregnant AP, who was under the impression that we were going to start a new life together. The bad news that we were fast forward a few months, and I find out my wife is now pregnant. 3 months apart from AP, she wanted to feel more secured over the other woman, so she basically forced us to have another child together. It's December 2014, and I went from having 1 kid to 3 kids in a blink of an eye. It's been crazy, but I'm there for all my kids. Now let's jump over to present time. Wife and I have had our fair share of bumps on the road, but I truly am loving the way we are raising our beautiful children. I have come a long way and have been faithful and committed to rebuilding our relationship. I go out of town for work from time to time, as does she. Just found out that for the last 2 years, she's been having this affair with her boss. Every happy hour event after work, every time she spent doing overtime, every trip to San Diego or Valentine's Day in Portland, he was there keeping her warm in a hotel room. Here's how I found out. She went for drinks after work, and I asked, "What time do you plan on being home?" She tells me 9 p.m. 9 p.m. comes around and she's nowhere in sight. I call her and nothing. I get a text with a picture of her girl coworker, and it's informing me that she's just grabbing a few more drinks before heading out. I found it so weird that she could text me but can't give me a call. I zoom into the picture into a napkin that was on the table and see where she's at. I drive 45 minutes from home to look for her, and there she is, at the bar with her boss with his arms around her. I walk up and they were both shocked to see me. She was quick to say, "Okay. Bye." I'm like, "Bye, but I just got here. Did I interrupt something?" She proceeds to tell me she's closed up her tab and she's leaving. I stay with her boss. The boss is drunk at this point, and he's talking to me about his wife. He tells me that she doesn't pay any attention to him and how they do whatever they want. This is the first time I meet this guy, and he's getting personal. He asked me if I've ever caught my wife cheating, and I proceed to let him know that I haven't, but if I do, it wouldn't be a pretty sight. He orders another drink and I see my wife calling him on his phone multiple times. I found that very odd. In the middle of his drink, he gets up and leaves to what I thought was the bathroom, but he actually leaves the bar. I take off home and have tons of questions for my wife. Her response was, "I'm sorry, I should have told you he was with us as well. I've never been the jealous type, and a friend told me to check my phone records." Oh my God. My heart dropped when I found out she's been talking to him Monday, Friday after work for 15 to 30 minutes at a time. I confronted her with all the phone bills extending to 2 years ago, and she informed me that after work, she has end-of-day reporting to do and he needs those numbers to report to his boss. It was such a good lie. Keep in mind, she's not salary and clocks in and out, so an HR point of view, reporting numbers after clocking out would be considered illegal. I needed proof of their conversations, but how I decided to record their conversations, I'm not going to mention how I did it, but once I heard what was said, my heart broke into a million pieces. She had conversations with her own cousin, talking about how much he brings excitement to her life, and it's not only the closeness, but how funny and goofy he is. She talked about how dumb I was to believe the end-of-day calls were real. She said how they would have to lay low for a while, and where there's a will, there's a way. And then there's the conversation between the two of them, where they talked about how much they loved one another and how they make each other feel. Straight caught. I knew I was furious, but didn't know what to do. Do I go to their HR? My wife just got a promotion, should I tell them it's because she's ducking her boss? I did the only thing I could think of. I contacted his wife. I did a ton of research with some help, of course, from a good buddy that loves drama, contacted his wife on LinkedIn and waited for her to call. She did, and I told her everything I knew. We put dates together, and they've been having a blast for years now while we both were being played for fools. We did a 4-way call, but they denied it all even after the recordings. They both finally came clean. Now I have to ask myself, do I stay for the kids, or leave her because my debts from my wrongdoings have been paid? She's begging for me back, but I've moved out and picked up the kids to take them to school every morning. She still works under him and swears it won't happen again, but how can I trust that after 2 years of loving another man? She let him in her heart and pants. Is this my chance to leave her and start a fresh new life, or do I stick around to make sure my kids grow up with an undivided family? After days of wrestling with my feelings, I finally decided what I needed to do. I had been betrayed, deceived, and lied to for 2 long years. The hurt was too deep, the wound too fresh. I couldn't let this slide, not after everything I'd been through. I couldn't allow my wife and her boss to get away with their infidelity without any consequences. So I began to plan my revenge. My first step was to gather solid evidence. I had recorded their conversations, and I had screenshots of their inappropriate messages, but I needed something more damning. I remembered that my wife had given me her phone's passcode for emergencies. One night while she was asleep, I decided to look through her phone. What I found shocked me. There were explicit videos of her with her boss. It was a hard pill to swallow, seeing my wife being close with another man, but it was the evidence I needed. I transferred the videos to my laptop and deleted them from her phone. Then I waited for the right moment to strike. That moment came a few weeks later. My wife had a presentation at her office, and her boss was supposed to be there too. I knew that they usually connected their laptops to a large screen for presentations, so I devised a plan. I uploaded the videos onto a USB drive and managed to swap it with my wife's presentation USB just before she left for her meeting. As the presentation began, I slipped into the back of the conference room unnoticed. As my wife connected the USB to her laptop, the explicit video started playing on the big screen. There was a collective gasp in the room, followed by awkward silence. My wife turned pale and her boss looked like he was about to pass out. I stepped forward, holding up the evidence I had collected. I told everyone in the to the HR department and the board of directors. The aftermath was swift and brutal. My wife and her boss were fired immediately. Their reputations were destroyed and they became social outcasts. The humiliation they felt was palpable, and I felt a sense of satisfaction. I had finally gotten my revenge. I filed for divorce soon after. My wife begged me to reconsider, promising that she would change, but I was done. I had given her a second chance before and she had thrown it away. I wasn't going to make the same mistake again. I moved out and focused on raising my children. I wanted to ensure that they grew up in a loving and supportive environment despite their parents' broken relationship. Over time, I managed to rebuild my life. I found a new job, made new friends, and even started dating again. It was a slow and painful process, but I came out of it stronger. As for my ex-wife, she struggled to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She lost her job, her reputation, and her family, and in the end, she lost the man she claimed to love. My story serves as a warning to others. Cheating is a choice, not a mistake. It's a decision that has far-reaching consequences, not just for the cheaters, but also for the innocent parties involved. It destroys trust, breaks hearts, and shatters families. And no matter how well you think you've hidden your infidelity, the truth always comes out in the end. My wife, 30th, and I, 34 AM, have been married for years. In that time, we had 2 kids, and I thought that I had the love of my life and best friend. We had what I thought was a great bed life and talked about everything together. I thought I would be with her until the day I passed. We married when we were young, and at the time, all she wanted to do was be a homemaker and mum. She had a couple part-time jobs off and on, but I was consistently the breadwinner. After having a couple kids, she suffered a lot of postpartum depression, and I was too young and inexperienced enough to encourage her to seek professional help. There were years where I would work a 10, 12-hour day, then come home and make dinner and take care of the kids, and then clean the house on the weekends, took care of all the laundry and did all the grocery shopping. I was always picking up the pieces while she was trying to heal herself. Around 2019, she finally got help through a therapist and psychologist and was diagnosed bipolar 1. After our second child, she told me that when he started school, she wanted to go into nursing and work her way into being a midwife. I was very supportive, even saying she should start what schooling she can right away. I told her I would happily be the homemaker once her income supplemented mine. She started going to school, getting her CNA certificate, working part-time, and also going to school full-time. I again picked up all the pieces and worked full-time while being the homemaker. When she was home, she would just want to play games on her PC. Mid-2022, I was offered a huge promotion to move across the country. My wife and I talked about it, and it was just too good to turn down. While talking about this, she decided she wanted to take time off from working in school and focus on helping me and the kids through the transition. She told me that she knows there were years where I was holding everything together, and that she just wanted to try to start repaying me for that. We moved at the end of 2022. I was there first, and she followed with the kids a month later. Company paid for everything. She didn't even have to pack. The company paid a moving company to take care of everything. Now here is my failing. While I was down here, I did start going on OnlyFans and became obsessed, eventually spending about $2K. She found out while she was traveling to move here and was obviously hurt. We fought for about a month about this. My wife told me to delete it right away, never go back on it the night she found out. I complied, I deleted it, and haven't been on it since. After about a month, my wife seemed over my OnlyFans failing, and we were having a great time exploring and getting to know the new area. She was trying to learn some SQL in Power by reporting while the kids were in school, saying she wanted to work from home job. She had also begun going to a local D&D game every Wednesday night at my encouragement. Side note, for about 3-4 years at this point, we had used the talks of swinging as foreplay. We were never super serious about it, but it was used as a turn-on in our bed life. My wife wasn't super into it at first, but eventually loved the idea of it. In late February of this year, while at a game night, my wife met a new man who invited her to a Star Wars tabletop game that happens every Friday. She came home and told me about it and also said that this guy was super hot. I asked if she wanted to fool around with him and she said, yeah. I wanted to talk more about it to try to set ground rules in case anything happened, but she didn't want to talk about it too much. The first Friday came, and she hung out with him after. She asked me to make sure I was okay with it, and I said I was. I even encouraged it, but when she was with him, she handed him her phone, and he started snapping me videos and telling me she had a new daddy. I thought I'd love it, but I hated every second of it. When she got home, I told her how I felt and how I didn't want her to do it again. She said she was disappointed because she liked it, but said nothing was worth losing me. I asked if she would delete him from Snapchat and quit the game groups, and she agreed. Instantly we fought here and there over that weekend. And on Sunday, she told me she was really upset that she was losing the gaming events. I agreed that she can go to the games, but asked that she not be alone with this other guy. And she agreed. Over the next month, we fought off and on. My self-confidence was shattered, and I was in need of her to build me up, but she didn't want to. About a month later on a Wednesday, she left our kids 10 and 6 at home alone to go to D&D early. I told her she can't do that, and she just said the kids were fine. Later that night after D&D, she said she wanted to go out for drinks with one of her friends from the group. I said I'd rather she come home, but then she ignored all my texts and calls and didn't come home until 3 a.m. She had her location sharing on and I saw her sitting in a random parking lot for about an hour at the end of the night. When she got home, I was furious at her for ignoring all my texts and calls. She told me she just wanted a night out with friends. The next morning, she told me that she had been seeing the other man for a month and loved him. She told me that she texted him inappropriate messages, hung out with him while the kids were in school and I was at work, and had him in our house. Within hours, she was telling me that there were much deeper problems in our marriage, and that I'd lost my zest for life. She agreed to be done with the game nights and to have no contact with this other guy. I left that weekend to go home and be with family. While gone, she smashed all our glasses and plates and stated she did it instead of hurting herself. She also wanted to go to the gym while the kids were home, and I told her she can't leave them home alone. She responded by saying she was gonna go smash more things. When I got home, she said she wanted to split up. I told her I want to work on us, but her mind was made up. About 3 weeks of constantly fighting later, I learned that she opened her own checking account, was applying for jobs, touring apartments, and had her mum put a lawyer on retainer for her. She said we were over. I told her she wins and that I'd leave. She thanked me, said she was so sorry for everything she did and told me she'd try to make sure I see the kids as close to 50% as possible. I asked her to stay away from this other guy as a favor to me so I could keep my dignity, but she insisted none of this was about him. It was a Friday, and we sat the kids down, told them they were devastated and cried for about an hour. After things had calmed down, I packed and left the house. I was going to stay with my cousin about 2 hours away. When I got to my cousin's house, I told her the whole story. She asked me what I wanted and what my gut was telling me to do. I told her I still loved my wife and wanted to fight for our marriage. She told me to do that. So I drove back home and called my wife ahead of time to tell her I needed to get something important to me, and then I'd leave. I came home and got my wedding ring. I told my wife I loved her and that I will always fight for us. She said nothing. She was cleaning the kitchen, which was unusual. I left to go back to my cousin's house and stopped for gas. While I was doing that, my Ring camera went off. I saw my wife move her car into our yard to make room in our driveway, and then she unplugged the Ring cameras. I called my oldest child to find out what was going on at home, and she told me my wife was having friends over to play games. Side note, the other guy runs these games. I came home and no one was there yet from her game group. I came in the house and my wife came racing to the door wearing makeup, which was unusual. When she saw it was me, she became unhappy and asked why I was back. I went to our kids' rooms and asked them to get socks and shoes on, that they were coming with me for the night. My younger child went right to the car, but my older child was confused by everything. My wife refused to let go of my older child and called the police. The police said there isn't anything they can do, but we needed to have a solution for the evening. I suggested me and the kids would stay there, and her friends wouldn't come over. My wife agreed once the police left. She said she hated me and asked when I was leaving. I told her I wasn't. She took the kids to her room and locked and barricaded the door. I just sat on the couch all night. The next morning, she took the kids to breakfast, and they never came back. I've also been served a summons to appear in court for her accusations of domestic issues. This week, she has called me 6 times asking to meet with her lawyer and mediate. I've told her I can't until I have representation. She let me see my kids for an hour last night in a food court mall, being supervised by her and her new friends. At the end, I asked if I could take the kids to church this Sunday, and she said no. She then texted me an hour later asking if I'd pay for childcare for after-school care because she needs a job. After that, in the face of such adversity, it seemed the world had conspired against me. The love of my life had become a stranger, and I was thrown into a whirlwind of heartache and humiliation. The shock of betrayal was nothing compared to the constant fear of losing my children. Despite the tumultuous events, I vowed to stay strong. A strange calm overcame me. I was a man on a mission. A mission to regain my dignity, my children, and to heal my broken heart. I sought out the best divorce lawyer in the city who was renowned for his unorthodox yet successful tactics. He listened to my story with an inscrutable expression. When I finished, he tapped his fingers on his mahogany desk and muttered, "This is a case of betrayal and manipulation, my dear friend. But don't worry. Justice will be served." Time passed in a blur. The court battles were fierce and exhausting, yet I held on. There were days when I was on the verge of giving up, days when the sight of my children's tear-streaked faces was too much to bear. But I held on. As the court case progressed, my lawyer and I presented a multitude of evidence about my wife's infidelity and her newfound disregard for our children's well-being. My wife was no longer the loving, caring person I had married. Her transformation shocked everyone, including the court. As the final hearing approached, my lawyer presented me with an unexpected plan. It was an audacious strategy, one that could make or break my case, but I trusted him and we decided to proceed. On the day of the final hearing, the court was buzzing with anticipation. The room fell silent as my lawyer rose to present our final piece of evidence. He turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, I request a recess of 1 hour. We have a witness who will shed new light on this case." The judge granted the request, and we waited. As the hour mark approached, the doors of the courtroom swung open. In walked a woman, her face hidden beneath a broad-brimmed hat. She seemed familiar, but I couldn't place her. As she lifted her hat and looked at me, I felt a jolt of recognition. It was the woman from OnlyFans, the one I'd spent so much money on. My heart pounded as I realized the gravity of the situation. She took the stand and began her testimony. She explained how she was an actress hired by my wife. My wife had discovered my activities on OnlyFans and had used it to manipulate me. The woman presented undeniable evidence, texts, emails, and recorded phone calls, revealing my wife's deceit. The courtroom was in an uproar. The judge called for order, but the murmurs continued. My wife looked at me, her face pale. She was trapped in her own web of lies. In the end, I was granted full custody of my children. My wife was ordered to undergo counseling and granted supervised visitation rights until she could prove she was a fit mother. I was vindicated, but the victory was bittersweet. Life moved on. I found a new job and a new home for my kids and me. My kids started healing from the trauma. And so did I. We found happiness and peace in our new life. I continued to hope that my wife would recover and once again be the woman I had loved. As for revenge, it wasn't about retaliation or inflicting pain. It was about unveiling the truth and securing justice. The unexpected way it unfolded had been a shock to everyone, including me. In the end, it was about preserving my dignity and safeguarding my children's future. And in that, I found my revenge.